So, what was your branch and division military?
I was in the Marine Corps, and I was in a unit called 2-4. It was an infantry unit. We were attached to 5th Marines out of Camp Pendleton.
When did you get into the military? How old were you?
Well, I was a little bit older than the kind of average age at the time. I joined when I was 20, and I went in 2005.
What got you in?
My dad had spent a lot of time in the Marine Corps, but in the reserves. You know, he had eventually retired in 2003, and so I think that was pretty influential. I looked in those types of things. Later in life, though, I came to realize that a lot of the history of the Marine Corps is more in alignment with my, kind of my being and my beliefs in life. And at the time, the war was picking up.
Which war was this?
I was deployed to Iraq.
What year were you deployed?
We went 06, 07.
Okay.
And it took about a year to do all the, a little like less than a year to do all the basic training and get worked up and into a unit and all that stuff.
What was going on in your life just before you signed up?
Honestly, a lot of confusion. You know, I had tried to join the military twice, and had medical issues that were kind of precluding things. The third time, for whatever reason, my medical screening was authorized, and so I went. But there was a lot of relationship confusion. I felt very frustrated, even suicidal. Like, better to die in a good cause than, kind of not at all. At the same time, I had done some missionary work in Africa right before I went, and I decided that the path that I had been on, the studies that I was pursuing for headed towards being a pastor, wasn't really something applicable to my life. I saw the needs of those people, and I saw they needed kind of more food, that kind of thing. And while I was there, they made me, the pastor I was with, they wanted to make him a chief in the village council for this little village in the middle of nowhere. And he didn't have any sons, and so they made me the prince under his chiefhood for that village. And one of the requirements to do that was that you need to go do something honorable, something big, something important. And at the time, I was already, I had my paperwork into the Marine Corps and hadn't been approved, right? So it was kind of like in limbo as I went on this trip to Africa. And I come back, and when I was talking to them, I said, "Will that count?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine." And I come back, and I had been approved, and so that was kind of my stamp of approval to go. It didn't dawn on me until later that I could have taken that same medical approval and gone and been an officer or something like that. But I went as a 03 contract. I wanted to go and do sniper work. That's pretty, mythically powerful in the Marine Corps. We run the sniper school of the world. But I was pretty geared up for that. Went to recon training platoon after infantry training for a minute, and was headed to that track. Had some medical complications, went back to the infantry, and then deployed with the infantry to theater and back.
What was your first day on the ground like once you got to Iraq? Can you paint a picture?
Yeah, we flew into theater by helicopter. We had spent a lot of time in Kuwait working up. Our deployment was something called a MEU, so we sailed across the Pacific to Kuwait and then flew up to the theater, and then got distributed out to the parts of the theaters we were going to be engaged in. We were sent to augment a unit called 2-3, which was a Hawaii infantry unit, and they were operating in the Haditha area, which is about 4 or 5 little cities all around a big dam on the Euphrates. And they had received about 230 casualties. They were almost most combat mandatory replacement, and they decided to augment their unit with 2 of our companies from the MU. And one of them was ours, so we took one side of the river, and the other company took the other side of the river, and we re-cleared all those cities in about a month. So.
You say re-cleared, what does that mean?
So the first wave had come through the Haditha area and house to house to house, cleared out any insurgency stuff that was there, anybody that was of counter force. They had collected whatever, ordnance and, all the stuff that they could clear out of the area. And at the time, the orders were to clear and move. So they cleared and left. As soon as they left, the same insurgents came back in, gathered everybody who had been friendly to the military, and beheaded them all in a soccer field. It was about 200 people in one day. And so this created the need to retake the area. I think there was probably, later in life I learned there was a lot going on there politically because of the dam, and there were Eastern Bloc countries that had helped fund and build that dam under Saddam's reign, and they were interested in the, kind of the money or the value of the dam. But yeah, to retake it, I believe that, I don't know, but I believe 2-3 had been assigned to that, and had come through that area on their own, and then was attempting to hold it, and not being able to do so very successfully. So.
What were your first couple of months like there?
So the first month we were doing that job all over again. We're going house to house to house, clearing everything out, searching holes and caves for ordnance and bombs and stuff. That was a very hectic time. It's a lot of work, a lot of everyday danger type of things. You could open one house and there'd be something to deal with. We didn't get in very much combat engagement at that time. We got shot at once from across the river, and there were a couple components of our unit that got blown up in IEDs, those types of things. But the daily danger stuff's off the chart. We're moving as a unit from house to house to house, and clearing every single house in the whole city, and then taking over a house at night, kind of kicking people out of their house and taking that over, sleeping in it, using it as a temporary base, and moving on to do the exact same thing the next day. Very little sleep, lots of movement. We weighed more than Roman centurions. Our gear that we carried and stuff that we moved around was really intense. And in that first month, there's so much activity. There's like almost little memory. Just so much that's going on. And we rotate sleeping schedules for fire watch and give maybe 3 or 4 hours of sleep and get up and go do it all over again. So, yeah, it was pretty brutal. We had assets, we had tanks and things like that could help out. So we didn't get we didn't get attacked a lot, but the danger was constant. At any moment, basically, we could have done that. And there was a lot of, at that time, there was a lot of focus. There was kind of at least clarity about what to do, what was going on. And the initial orders were to clear that space and pack up and leave. Our MU actually had no orders to be in theater when it deployed, and so when we got orders to go up was a little unusual. So the first month I was like that, and it was very difficult. I would say that the thing that stuck with me in the long run, like me personally, I'm good at dealing with emergency things, like combat things, and I never had any of those problems. To go back to your question about what the first day was like, when I ran off the helicopter, I fell in the dirt. I felt like unprepared and just kind of an idiot. And I hated that feeling. I wanted to be like the the specialist, or the, you know, on top of the being the best Marine that I could, but the biggest difficulty was actually in taking people's houses. You know, something about kicking them out of their houses lasted a long time after those conflicts, and created a lot of shame to me. You know, I don't know that it did that with the other people that I was with, but I just saw a lot of things I wasn't expecting to see. You know, that was one of them.
Like, are there any, you said it was kind of hard to remember that time period. Is there any one house that stands out for you?
Yeah, you know, if I meditate on it, think about it, I could probably pretty vividly remember a lot of them. Maybe there's some fun evenings where, you know, my team leader, squad leader, and the other squad leaders are goofing off doing things, you know. But there's this one house that we take. It's freezing cold when we're there. You know, we're there at the winter time. We're there at Christmas. They recorded record lows up to -13 when we're there at this dam. And you know, I would go up on the top of roofs to do fire watch for the night, and my Camelback hose would freeze, and you know, couldn't drink water. That kind of thing was so cold. And this one house that we take is kind of large, though.
What was going on in the house?
This house had Christmas things in it. You know, it was like, it had some things that reminded me of home. Like, it kind of felt like a home for a minute. Mm-hmm. And we trashed the place, slept everywhere. You know, guys would steal things off the shelves and stuff. And we would, you know, pack up and leave and move on to the next one. Like,
did you take people with you? Did you kick the people out?
Yeah, we kicked them out of their house for the night. And why I remember this one is that this particular place, you know, the family was really upset. They didn't want us to kick them out of their house. The lady was really upset, and they're trying to argue about it, and there's really nothing they could do. You know, they're with a lot of machine guns. We're gonna take their house, period.
It's Christmas. It's 18 below.
Yeah, right.
And they just walked off into the night.
You know, I don't know what arrangements they made with the translator. My guess is they had family, maybe. You know, I don't think that we were horrifically rude about things. I don't think we were, you know, intentionally just harming people, that kind of stuff. But I just remember this lady screaming a lot, yelling a lot, and that's why I remember that house. So.
And then, how long was that deployment?
Well, so initially we're supposed to go clear that area for that month and kind of secure things for this unit and then leave. They extend us for another month. We get to the end of that month, they extend us for another month. And we get to the end of that month, so it goes on like that for quite a while. You know, we had to notify our families, like, we're going to stay, we don't know how long, we're already supposed to have left. And that stuff was pretty traumatic because the first wave of that was literally at Christmas time. We had gotten finished with our mission and our objective and gotten to the end of Christmas, and we were supposed to leave, and we didn't. And then it was like, I don't know that we're leaving, period. You know, are they going to fly us back, or are we going to be here for 6 months, or are we going to be here, you know, for a year? Nobody knew. And part of that, I think, was the logistics of what to do with the unit that was there. You know, if they pulled that unit out, and we weren't enough to hold the area. If they replaced it, that's a lot of work, and I think they were using us as a band-aid, you know, for as long as they could until that unit was naturally due to roll out. Later, I found out, many years later, not even until maybe a couple of years ago, I ran into somebody who was in intelligence in that same area. And we were at kind of like a Marine Corps event, and he told me all the political side, the things that were going on there, and all the changes that were happening, things like that. And so it's kind of interesting. Every now and then later I would learn, you know, the work that we did and the importance of it, and how many lives we saved and that kind of thing. But at the time, you know, it dragged on and on and on. The overall deployment was about 9 months, 9.5 months, which was very long at the time. The Marine Corps' doctrine was to be kind of in country for 6 months and total deployment of 7 months. And we sailed there, and then they, for whatever reason, they decided not to fly us back. They decided to sail us back. So the Navy went and sailed all the way to Japan and back, just to goof off with all the time that we were in country and they had nothing to do. And we flew back to Kuwait, got on the boats, and sailed all the way back again.
So it was, how'd you spend the rest of that deployment? Was there a lot of clearing, or?
No, then it was the opposite. We do all that work, or there's all the house clearing and moving through that area, and then they want us to hold the area. And so now we're patrolling, you know, kind of every day, and we build at first kind of a base. You know, we take over a larger area and fortify it a little bit, and build it up, and then we build some checkpoints, you know, in and out of the main roads of the town, and we split up duties with the rest of the unit, and we rotate patrolling through sections of the city. Eventually we got orders to take a census. I got sent off to a course called SSE, Sensitive Site Exploitation, which at the time the rules in the theater were changing, and we had to collect evidence and package it and send it off to the courts in Iraq whenever we, you know, caught somebody or did something, which was, let's say, kind of an antithesis of Marines. You know, nobody was there to be a policeman, and I was the one that was tasked with keeping all that. I had all the records for the unit, and so I would keep all the census records as well, and compile all the census, and so there were those kinds of jobs. But the feeling and flavor of everything changed a lot. You know, it's like waiting around for things to happen now. You know, waiting around to die, in a sense. Like, when's something gonna happen? Boredom, and, you know, other things would kick in. And that led to things like suicide bombings and, you know, other types of attacks that we weren't encountering in the beginning. But those months dragged on into, you know, I'd say April. I think it was somewhere in April that we finally started to wind up.
So you said you started to see attacks. What did those look like?
Well, mainly some parts of our overall company got attacked with like roadside bomb things. Smaller things though. One tank got shape charged in half, which was particularly technically proficient and nasty. Nobody saw that coming. But the suicide bombing was the worst attack that we encountered, you know, that we lived through. And this was on a day where the squad I was in was assigned to these checkpoints. And so there's like a search area as people come into the town, and then there's like an overwatch hut, like fortified hut outside of that, and another one inside of that. And so as people come into the town, you know, the overwatch can watch what's coming in, and they come in and they get searched, and they go into the town, or the other way too. Somebody decides that they want to do their re-enlistment ceremony, like down by the bank or something like that. And, we're assigned to this thing for the morning. We've been there for a while, and all these Marines start to show up all over the place. then I get this nasty feeling like this is really stupid, you know. And I say it a little bit, but yeah, it's way out of my pay grade to make decisions about things like that at the time. But yeah, sure enough, you know, the company commanders were down there, lots of people were down there. Somebody had been watching whatever we were doing, waiting for the right time to attack, and came in with a suicide bomb. Got all the way into the checkpoint, blew up not just our people, but the Iraqis that we worked with. We had female searchers that were Marines and translators that got killed. Our company first sergeant got killed, who was headed home to retire. We personally in our squad received injuries that took a couple of our people home. There's just, you know, the amount of casualties in one day. And because we were down there and it was our, you know, kind of our area, cleaned up most of it and took care of most of it.
When you say cleaned up, what that look like? What's involved? What'd you say?
I personally picked up body parts and put them in bags. You know, there were parts of human beings all over the place. And it took a long time to clean all that up. Yeah.
So then, after something like that, what do you do the next day?
Go back and do it again.
So, how many deployments did you say?
Yeah, I only did the one. When I came back, I was on a med board. Got out a little bit earlier than a normal enlistment, at about 2 years and 10 months. And my unit didn't deploy to combat again anyway. The next deployment that unit did was to Okinawa, and it's part of why I got out. It wasn't due to do anything more in theater. My good friends who I went to boot camp with in infantry training school, most of them got assigned to 29 Palms, to units of 2-7, stuff like that. Those guys deployed, you know, 2 times, 3 times, and even in one enlistment. So relatively low, you know, for me, but yeah, that time in country was the only time that I would.
So, what was your first week like back in the States?
Well, technically, my first week back in the States was in Hawaii. Because we sailed back, we got to refuel in Australia and it's back. And they do something on the way back, or they used to, called the Tiger Cruise. So you can fly one family member out and they can sail back with you. And I flew my dad. My dad flew out for that, and because he had already retired, he could wear his uniform. It's kind of funny. And everybody's like, "Why is this guy? You know, how's he running around with the first sergeant?" It was pretty silly stuff. It was very hard. There's a lot of self-destructive attitude at the time. A lot of drinking, and a lot of like, you know, we made it, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a very victorious attitude, you know. In the Marine Corps, it may be this way in other branches, but in the Marine Corps, a lot of that's our job, and so we expect it in a sense. You know, it's not something we have to celebrate too much, you know. I think we were all relieved to be gone, and I was very much looking forward to coming home to see my wife. But yeah, it was very difficult to be back in the United States in a sense.
How long were you back in the States before you left the service?
About another year.
Yeah.
Yeah, about another year I was still in the Marine Corps.
So, What was what was life like after you left the service? What was going on for you?
Well, for me, I wanted to get out and start a training thing for missionary work, to do sustainable housing and farming. And I worked on that a little bit before we left, but, you know, I got talked into moving back into Phoenix by some younger pastor people that didn't end up being very scrupulous, and things kind of just became increasingly miserable. You know, like in the beginning, I have a clarity to things, a purpose to things, and I run into a lot of really negative stuff on the backside. And it starts to tear up my family life. You know, my mental state collapses. We had our first child right before we left. That was very traumatic. I was angry all the time. Even before leaving, I was angry all the time. You know, I was constantly angry at my wife. Abusive, not physically, but with the anger and with my words for sure. And the boy comes and I find some peace in that, but I've already broken the relationship. You know, the marriage is already very broken, and I don't know how to lead the people that are with me to succeed, because we're attached to these other people who are really negative, a negative influence on things. And so eventually I shut that stuff down, and life becomes a never-ending downward spiral. You know, I would, for years is pretty much what I experienced.
What did that look like, going down that spiral?
I didn't do a whole lot of substance abuse. I wasn't an alcoholic. I didn't use drugs of any kind. Tobacco, I smoked a lot. You know, in retrospect, I can see it affecting my mental state, you know, quite a lot. But beyond that, there wasn't really any substance abuse. But I felt miserable, suicidal, and I was very abusive. It started to become physically abusive with the kids. You know, and I felt trapped. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? You know, a lot of it was very compulsive. Like, I didn't feel like the actions that I was doing were even my own. No idea what to do to change it or control things or anything like that. I went to the VA, you know, tried to check into some of the programs they had and do some of the training, things like that, and found that to be even more confusing. You know, Phoenix at the time, the VA Phoenix was in the news for being the worst VA in the country, and they had to fire people for their administrative, you know, missteps, and there was just so many combined things to make it awful. And yeah, that left me with a lot of questions, you know, just, and no answers. I wasn't interested in being medicated to death or, you know, trying to do anything like that. And the classes and things that they had were, you know, kind of, to me, kind of just silly. You know, they weren't fixing anything. I equally didn't know how to be honest about any of it. You know, I didn't know how to tell anybody what was really going on with me. I didn't know how to tell anybody how I felt about any of it. And even if I did, I wouldn't have thought that there would be an answer, you know, a solution, something that would actually change things. And so it was hopeless, you know. It's kind of like a never-ending hopeless thing. I did at one point go study hypnotherapy and hypnosis, and that was beneficial to me. Like, you know, I think it was the first time I felt any relief from all that. But there was so much trauma and so much to process by that point. You know, I would have had to have somebody dedicated to me and my healing only for such an extremely long period of time, you know. And I think that began to dawn on me too. Like, nobody has that kind of time. You know, I don't have that kind of money. I don't know what I would do, you know, to even get that done. I think a lot of the hope even in going and studying it was that I would figure out how to do it on my own. You know, years and years of were spent like, how am I gonna solve this problem? You know, how can I get away from all of whatever I feel and all this abusive stuff? Like, I'm losing my family. You know, my people are miserable. I'm miserable. And
Did you divorce during this time?
shortly after I studied hypnotherapy, we got divorced. You know, we kind of took one last stab at life, and I was so over leveraged and underskilled when I went to do bigger business things that I, you know, basically almost bet my family on the outcomes of those things, and there wasn't enough relationship left to keep those, to keep the family going. I didn't know what else to do other than get divorced. Like, we weren't gonna figure out any answers or things that we kind of hadn't already done, you know. But that creates an even worse spiral. That's a cascade, you know, cascade fail. I remember the day that she says, you know, we're getting divorced, and like that inside of my being like falls out. The only thing I can think about from that point is dying. It just won't go away, it won't go away, it won't go away, it won't go away. And the depression's like worse and worse and worse, you know, on a daily basis. Waking up and what I woke up from and what I woke up to, you know, were worse every time. And I think about killing myself, like, you know, on a daily basis, you know, and then it's like all day, and it's like the only thing I can think about. And I don't want to tell anybody about it, you know.
At that time?
Yeah, at that time I don't want to tell anybody about it at all. I keep thinking that something will change the relationship and everything will be fine, and you know, like the shame and the guilt of all those things were massive. It wasn't so much that I had failed my family, but like, you know, my entire life. Like, I failed my life. And there wasn't going to be a way to fix it. There wasn't going to be a way to solve it. You know, no matter what I did, it was going to be ruined forever. And, you know, one of the most difficult things about being in the military, a lot of people come from backgrounds, firearms and that type of thing, you know, are pretty proficient with that stuff. Maybe more than most. So I kind of knew, like, well, if I shoot myself, it's got to be like this. Pretty quickly a plan develops, you know. I've got all the things that I need in order to kill myself, and I'm supposed to go see my family, kind of go visit them. They end up moving to Utah. I'm down in Phoenix staying with some family I have while this is all going on, and I go see them, and I'm so overwhelmed by the brokenness that has happened to them, you know. And it's silly because in retrospect, like, I could see how there were so many pieces of hope even in that time, but at the time, you know, all I could see was that I failed so badly. I saw the misery on the faces of the kids, and you know, I saw how sad and miserable my wife was, and you know, this is kind of like the tipping point. Like, I can't take it, you know. So when I go to drive back to Phoenix from seeing them in Utah. I roll this car. I get up to about 70 miles an hour and roll this car, trying to kill myself. And I survive. Nothing happens to me. And there's lots of psychosis things going on at the time, with all that, but I still don't have any answers, But something very strange had happened, maybe a month before, leading up to these events, where my wife's mother had immigrated from Colombia, and she had said to my wife, he needs to go to ayahuasca. She just says this to her, and she had never been, never gone to medicine or anything like that. And it's something about it that must have stuck with me for later. It would still be years before I got to ayahuasca, but something in those things, kind of triggered. When I woke up from rolling the car, I had been trying to heal myself, keep myself alive, listening to this anti-depression hypnotherapy. And it's this lady named Jody Whitley. It's like the most boring voice in the universe. And she says this thing in her hypnosis that it's like, you are still alive. And I wake up with that in my head, like, you are still alive. So there's some kind of thread there, that wants to stay alive and wants to heal and do those types of things. But yeah, those events all occur in 2015. 2016, I moved to Utah, and I go to the VA there, and it's a much different system than the one in Arizona, much better. They have a lot of specialists for mental health there that were a lot better, and they put me on a lot of medications and things. Did a lot of work, but the thing that really mattered was that I started to see a therapist there that was really good. She was really good, very dedicated to my health and my success, and I could be honest for the first time about having attempted suicide, and so that started to relieve a lot of that pressure. And I got involved in church when I moved to Utah, which I hadn't for a very long time, due to all the negative church influences that I had experienced in Phoenix. And I also started studying Kung Fu when I went to Utah.
So you're talking about your involvement with LDS?
Yeah. When I went to Utah, I got baptized in the LDS church. And there's a lot of spiritual or mystical experiences that lead these things. These are kind of the events on the outside, but something about that combination of things, what I was praying about before I moved there was like, how do I get my family back? I am not going to die, and what do I do? Like, what do I do to get my family back? And slowly, pursuing that road, came together over that year. At one point, whatever I had studied in the Kung Fu, something shifted, and the medications they had me on my body completely rejected, and it was like not the thing to be doing anymore. In retrospect, medically, it had been kind of like a little bit misdiagnosed at the time, and so even though those things were kind of done in good faith, they weren't quite the right things to do. And but there's so much healing and so much empowerment that happens in that year. I get in like a flow with things because of Kung Fu. Like I begin to have a different perspective about, religion could be just part of my family. It doesn't have to be something so severe. Even if it's not what I thought it would be or even wanted it to be, it could be something that holds us together. And so my wife and I get back together, and we're planning on getting remarried even in that year. And those things don't surface, quite at the right time, and it causes us to separate again. And I meet somebody else, and I'm very dedicated to moving on, like growing a family, like raising things. And now I'm stuck in kind of a even bigger internal dilemma. And this is the beginning of 2017. And the dilemma is like, what am I supposed to do now about family? Am I am I supposed to go, work this out the direction I started, or am I supposed to start over and work it out in this new direction? Like, what am I supposed to do? And this pressure was actually, in a lot of ways worse. It was a lot harder to deal with, and there was a deeper asking in my being about resolve to it. A friend of mine, who was a friend at the time and became kind of one of probably my worst enemy, but at the time he had started going to ayahuasca because when we were together and my mother-in-law had said something about that, he did homework on it and decided to go do that for himself, right? So I didn't go and he did. We reconnect on the other side of those events a couple of years later. And so he sat in the medicine a couple times and he's like, oh, you gotta go. And where and who he sat with wasn't very healthy. This woman and I are kind of hurrying to put a life together to take care of the things that are going on with the kids back in Utah, that type of thing. And this guy convinces us that we should go to ayahuasca, so we hire his buddy to do private ceremony things, kind of our gift to each other to start this life. And get into the medicine, like the first cup doesn't do anything at all. Second cup's kind of like, oh, I feel kind of good. And I had this one big experience of like my mother hugging me, like a thing I had never felt before, like some kind of love I've never felt. And the third cup was kind of like a little bit more of that, some more intuitive things. I saw like frequencies of human beings and like tuning to them and like all kinds of things like that. But ultimately, because of the setting that we were in, and a lot of because I didn't have any other reference point. After the ceremony's closed, I take it kind of recreationally, like it's time to party, hang out, goof off, and I don't understand the sacredness of the medicine at the time. Medicine kicks in very big, and it takes me on this very difficult, deep ego death journey. It was terrifying. And there was no integration from that. There was no help with it. There wasn't okay, let's sit, process it, and meditate with it, things like that. It's just kind of a very terrifying journey. So I don't think I would have gone back, but this dilemma about what to do with life is still driving. And I'm working on taking a neurofeedback company at the time in Miami. And some clients that we had asked if I'd ever been to ayahuasca before, and I was like, yeah, I have, but it wasn't very good. They said, oh, we're going on Friday, and there's these Colombians coming from the jungle, and just something about it when they said that I had to go. And so I sit in the medicine with a shaman from the Murray tribe, and it had a completely different experience. The first night was, even in the second cup, it shows me all of the things to do with my family. The third cup takes me on a long journey, seeing all the negative things I'd attracted to myself and patterns of how it worked, and the road to take to release all those patterns. And at the time, I hadn't even, I had stopped being LDS. It kind of stopped being part of my world because it didn't work for my family environment, for the solutions to my family things. The medicine shows me no, go back and go that way. Finish going to the temple in this faith, and everything will work out. And so a different life starts to develop, and an awareness oh, there's a solution to all of this pressure, mental pressure, soul pressure, inward things, problems on the family front, whatever. There's a release to all that. There's a place that there's something to do that is actually healing of these things. Isn't simply processing it.
So, uh, walk me through a little bit farther. So as you, now that you've sat with the stage, ayahuasca for a couple of times, now you're taking what you're learning in the medicine and applying it into your life. Where does it take you from there?
Talking about all the way to here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So from 2017 to here, yeah, I've sat many times, many different circles, many different shamans. The time after the Colombians is how we meet. When I get back to Utah, you know, the clarity and the value of those effects probably start to wear off in a month or so, something like that at that time. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? You know, am I supposed to go all the way back to Florida to deal with this? You know, like my family and all that stuff that I need to do is here, and praying about this, and I look it up, and oh, there's a church in Arizona, you know, that does the same thing. That's how I end up calling you and how we meet. And that gives me an even bigger perspective. You know, there's other people that are not jungle people that are sitting in this medicine, pursuing this as their healing, as their worship, as their value. And I think sitting with you in particular helped to be like, you could do it. You know, like you can do it. You don't have to have this background. You know, you don't have to be from these cultures in order to do it. You don't have to go visiting a different culture in order to do it. Yeah, you know, it's a lot of rewiring. It's a lot of care in a sense, like, you know, understanding grows over time and knowing more. To go and reflect, you know, kind of in a timeless space, like work on things timelessly and be in tune with the planet and the universe in such a deep way always unpacks whatever all that pressure is. You know, so at this point I kind of know what the answer is. You know, life may end up pressuring like this, or may end up pressuring like that, but even so, you know, the thing to do is just return and worship again and, you know, go from that point type of a thing. And I brought up many other people, you know, at this point to the realization or through that same healing. Some veterans as well at this point, but more and more I discover that all human beings are kind of pressured in that way, or almost all human beings are pressured in some way, and there's a reconnecting that's due there, you know, that is beneficially valuable for everyone to experience. And, you know, at this point, I'm very grateful to have options, like places that I can bring people, you know, places that I trust, or people that serve those things or sit with those things that I value or feel safe, you know, safe to take people. That's a hard thing. Like, there are plenty of places that I wouldn't take veterans, because the effects of their healing could be so extreme. You know, it would be very hard sometimes for people to deal with it. Like the first ayahuasca experience I had, I think that person didn't know how to deal with something so intense. But I've subsequently seen that be dealt with, you know, many times and in a couple of places, and I think that's really nice. You know, it's not a guess. For me, I've learned all kinds of things. You know, I've learned how to meditate in that time. I've learned how to find my own answers and path and be fulfilled as a being. You know, I rebuilt my family. We became incredibly joyous, and even had a new baby together. Like, we've done all the healing that happened in my being. You know, I've learned even how to share out, to other beings. I think for veterans, probably like the two big things, that are the question are, is this gonna help me solve things with my family? That's like the big one. Am I gonna be able to heal with my family? It's an interesting thing. It's very rarely like, will I heal? There's a Marine at the ceremony I was at this weekend. Same questions, and that's kind of reassuring because we're connected. I think we're all kind of connected in that way. Like the core concern is, will I be fulfilling to my family, my people? And I love to be able to be this far down the road where I can be like, absolutely. It's not even a guess. I don't have to think about it. Like, my family's so fulfilled, they can even be rebellious, and we can still all love each other like crazy. It's amazing, Like, we can even argue and still be healthy now. Like, those things weren't even possibilities, 2-3 years ago. And I've spent so much time and so much love with all of them, where I am even the leader, right? That blows my mind. That wasn't possible 5-6 years ago. And that's not even a thought that I could conceive of. At best, I was thinking, well, I might be able to get him back somehow, or impress him somehow a little bit, something like that. There's so much deeper than that. Like, oh no, I can be in love with them, like, permanently. I can be so in love with them that I can be the stability for their struggles and problems. The second thing that I would say, and this may be unique to veterans, and it may be unique to maybe only some veterans, but I'm going to speak to it anyway because it's part. Combat veterans are also concerned about what it would do with them in threatening situations. And so I tell this story. I'm in ceremony in Miami, and I'm getting ready to fly out. I've actually somebody that is flying out in the morning. We don't really have time to get hotels and stuff, so I'm taking a nap in the car. And it's outside of MIA. There's this. It used to be like the military, like little military post that was attached to the airport, and it's turned into a restaurant. It's very beautiful. And it's 3 a.m, and I had been in ceremony that whole weekend, and I get this weird feeling like, uh-oh, there's something going on. I gotta get out. And I hear all this screaming and stuff, and this car had pulled into there. It's like there's nobody around. And there's this girl screaming, I'm like, oh, like I feel that danger space inside of me. Like, this is something very dangerous. And I get out of the car, and this guy and this girl, this guy's yelling at this girl. They're going up the ramp, the off ramp, where the freeway comes off right there. And I yell at him like, hey, I say some stuff to him, get him to stop and whatever, and I go confront them. And this guy has like blood on his sweatshirt, and she's all beat up, and I'm like in the middle of a murder. Right? If I'm not there, this girl's probably dead. And my military training would have been like, kill him, something like that, attack him. Even my kung fu training probably would have been like, attack him, something like this. And because I am so centered, right? Not that those things haven't helped me be in that space, able to deal with the danger that's going on. But because I'm so centered, I could talk to them. And I could talk to them right in the middle of extreme danger, right? To the point where he lets her go, and she walks away, and I finish talking to him. Nobody gets hurt at all. And like, that is not a thing that I could do without medicine. I only have the training to attack it. I only have the training to fight it, be the hero, be it, something like that. Nobody even knew that happened, but it saved her life. You know, so I think that veterans are concerned about that too, because when we get in threatening situations, it tends to trigger something like fight, kill, you know. There's a very programmed response there. And that's hard to change, you know. I can't say that it's not valuable to study Kung Fu, those types of things, like, you know, I can't say that that wasn't a component of that evening. It's just, there's literally nothing I would have done other than be in physical conflict without the medicine. And because of it, like, I saved that woman's life without any conflict at all. On the backside, you know, in combat, things get very difficult inside, like, or out after the combat, stuff like that. A lot of times, you know, there's a lot of delayed processing, those types of things. None of that happened to me from this. You know, it was terrifying, but it wasn't overwhelming. I didn't go through that like drop in being and consciousness, right? Like, none of that happened to me. It was like, I was so grateful, you know, I was so grateful to have been there and that she was safe and all that type of thing. And the reintegrating of the after the danger, right, was smooth and normal. And that's not something that I can say without medicine. So.
That's beautiful, brother. Sounds like a good note to leave it on.